Good morning, shalom everybody, welcome to all our viewers throughout the world on TorahAnytime.com. It's Bez Hashem, we're going to be learning today Halachas, Shalosh Teshuvos, but before we begin I just want to mention that BJX has its annual fundraiser coming up next week, Bez Hashem, March 3rd. It's the only fundraiser of the year for BJX. We do collect sometimes throughout the year for brisim, to make weddings, to send people to Israel, to buy tefillin, but for the operating budget, for all the expenses that go into this amazing organization, it's only once a year. So I ask everybody to please be involved. Go to helpbgx.com, become a raiser. Becoming a raiser means that you set up your own goal of what you could raise or what you could try to aim to raise. You send it out to all your family, to your friends, to all your contacts. Tell them why this organization means something to you. And then there's a thermometer, and you can monitor the progress and see how much people are contributing for your goal. So please do that on helpbgx.com. Thank you. Okay, so the Shiur was actually this week's very interesting. This past week, 3 times people asked about medicine on Shabbos. Came up a few times, and so I thought it's kedai to discuss it. Are you allowed to take medicine on Shabbos? Are you allowed to take vitamins on Shabbos? Are you allowed to take... somebody asked a very interesting shayla. They want to know if he's allowed to take his... there's a sleeping pill that many people take called Ambien. You're allowed to take Ambien, or if you're allowed to take melatonin. Melatonin helps, melatonin is really a hormone, and unfortunately a lot of parents give it to their kids. I'm not judging any parents, if a parent has a incorrigible child where the child can't be pacified, the child can't be placated at all, it's very, very difficult dealing with a child that's awake at night. But to give a baby melatonin, I don't know if it's healthy to introduce something that's endocrinological, something that's hormonal into a child. The body naturally produces it, and I don't know if anybody knows the long-term consequences of that. To give an older child, when the child is more developed, it may be okay. To give an adult, obviously you have to make sure there's no contraindications with other medications. But all these things, it's Ambien, melatonin, when people have difficulty sleeping, you're allowed to take that on Shabbos, or just medications. Came up to Shiloh about somebody that wanted to know. Somebody was told that they have quite high triglycerides, cholesterol. They have to take a pill. Somebody else asked this week about rubbing cream in on Shabbos. This person's child broke out with a severe rash. It seems viral related. I'm not sure exactly. I didn't ask in all the particulars because I really didn't have time. It was mamash right before Shabbos. What is the halacha? And this came up a few times this week, so I took it as a siman mishamayim that obviously it should be discussed. Now, generally speaking, we should know that there's a very big ban, a very severe ban, a very restrictive ban on medications on Shabbos that dates back thousands of years, because Chazal, the rabbis, were afraid of shchikas hamanim. The way that in the olden times medication was prepared, medicine usually came in the form of herbs and other botanical things, as well as that was more the ancient form of medicine, and they used to grind it. There was a whole preparation. They had to pulverize it and grind it. They had to use different instruments, and all these things are Isurei Shabbos. They entail violating Shabbos. And what? Pestle and mortar, exactly. Even though today, in most countries, in the third world countries, it's probably still very prevalent, but medicine was commercialized, and there were a lot of innovations made, so it's not done. Although you do see sometimes, if you go to any pharmacy, just a local pharmacy, you see sometimes they do have to crush pills. That's after the pills are already made. They crush it in order to make it soluble, in order to make it that it can be diluted, whatever it is. It's a cane. It's a semblance of that. So although it's not done, what?
Because something that's already
right. So it's not. I'm saying it's not. It's an offshoot of it. In other words, it wouldn't be considered to be the original Isser at all. But you could see that. At least you could see that there is a reason, that there's a relation to it. There's something similar to it. You could fathom, conceive that there's a notion towards it. So although today, medicine is not prepared that way, it was never lifted. The restriction was never lifted, and therefore all medicines are under the banner, under the umbrella of this Gezerah, lest you come to be over the malacha, the Isser malacha, the violation of Shabbos of Teichen, of grinding. And even medicines that are liquid or that are non-medicinal, really, let's say like oils. Anything that potentially could be used to medicate somebody or to, let's say, heal somebody would be, according to Chachamim, would be included in this ban, which is surprising. And that's why I said it's a very overarching, a very, very restrictive ban, because even if it's not related at all to pills and to grinding, it still would be under this Isser. And it was never lifted. So therefore, anything that a person would take that has to do with healing the person would be a potential problem. The exception would be a Michael Bream. A Michael Bream means that's something that people, even healthy, normal, healthy people would eat it, and therefore it's not considered to be a medicine. It's not considered to be something that is for healing.
Sorry, vitamins? What about vitamins?
Right, so Rav Moshe has a very innovative psak. Rav Moshe has a very pioneering psak. Rav Moshe is Mekel, Rav Moshe is lenient. Rav Moshe Feinstein is lenient about vitamins. He says if vitamins are taken prophylactic, they're taken preventive. They're not taken to treat a symptom, to treat sickness. Rather, they're taken to keep a person healthy. Then Rav Moshe holds that it's okay to take vitamins on Shabbos because it's considered to be a Michael Bream. It's considered to be a food that is for healthy people. However, I think that Rav Moshe does say that if a person is taking vitamins in order to feel better, let's say to strengthen his immune system, that he's not feeling so well, to strengthen his immune system, it may be a problem. Rav Moshe's assumption is that you're taking it in order to fortify yourself, in order to keep yourself healthy, to safeguard your health, but not to cure an ailment or an illness or a malady of any nature. Okay, that's so basically, if a person is otherwise healthy and a person is just taking vitamins preventively, then a person is allowed to take vitamins on Shabbos. As far as a sleeping pill is concerned, a sleeping pill may very well be viewed as a Michael Bream, as something that is not considered to be for a chronic condition, and is not considered to be that people take it not due to sickness, they take it in order to, for their leisure, for their pleasure. If somebody's going on an airplane and he doesn't want jet lag, he may pop. I'm not advocating or endorsing. I don't know the long-term consequences or effects if somebody takes it very regularly, how it could influence the physiology of the person. It may very well have deleterious effects. I don't know. But if you're traveling, a person's going to Eretz Yisrael, it's a lengthy flight. There's typically a 7-hour jet lag, and a person wants to be able to sleep on the plane. The person's not sick. That's not considered to be sick at all. Then on Shabbos, he's allowed to then take a sleeping pill according to many poskim. Now, if a person has a condition where he can't sleep, that's something else. That's not a bream. That means that chas v'shalom, a person that, the Gemara tells us that a person cannot go without sleep. A certain amount of time he can't go without sleep. It's going to affect his health, and it will have severe repercussions on his health. So now, that would actually be a supporting factor to allow a person to take a sleeping pill. Because if a person would be then a chayla, person is sick, then let's say a person doesn't get sufficient sleep and then he's going to never be in bed all day, then the halacha is that a person that will be in bed all day is allowed to go ahead and take medicine. If a person thinks that they're going to get sick, let's say a person was exposed to a virus, today, it's foremost in everybody's mind. There are people walking around with masks. I had to go visit somebody in a hospital recently. I actually called to make sure that there were floors that weren't quarantined, because before, when I was going to go a month before that, I was told that the second floor and the fourth floor were all quarantined because of the flu. And the Ramah paskins that you're allowed to go ahead, even to a place that's contagious to fulfill the mitzvah of communicative illness, to fulfill the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, right? It's a big shiloh. You have somebody that's sick and you want to visit the person that's ill. Are you allowed to go ahead and subject yourself potentially to the illness? On the other hand, somebody needs visitors. The person is isolated. The person is quarantined. The person is suffering immensely and like in solitary confinement almost. The person is in solitude. So the person, and what gives a person life is visitors. It could actually help cure a person. So there's a machlekes, there's a huge machlekes of poskim about if you're allowed to do that or not. Shomer mitzvah la yeda davara, are you considered to be somebody that is keeping a mitzvah and therefore no harm could befall you? But is that true, or is that something that in some chalanes you're not allowed to rely upon an ace? As a matter of fact, the pasuk speaks about a person who was a quasi-negligent murderer, somebody that killed somebody. It was accidental. So it says that he has to lanu shama rotzeach, that the person has to escape to the city of refuge. So there's a fascinating medrash on that. The medrash says that Moshe Rabbeinu, the great Moshe Rabbeinu, that he was happy. After he saw this pasuk, he was happy that he ran away from Pharaoh. So the question is, what's the connection? What's the correlation? So I saw from the Achronim speak out a fascinating point, and they say that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't sure if he followed the right protocol. When he ran, when he was a fugitive, when he was threatened to be assassinated by Paro, when Paro was infuriated that he dared to assail one of Paro's officers, so Paro threatened him with his life, so he ran away. So Moshe Rabbeinu was deliberating, maybe I did the wrong thing. Maybe I should have just relied upon the hashgacha of Hashem, the providence of Hashem, and had bitachon, that I did the right thing, Rebbe Hashem will protect me. When he saw this pasuk that says that the person that has to run away to the city of refuge, it taught him that a person can't say, well, I didn't do anything intentionally, I didn't harm anybody, hurt anybody intentionally. It really wasn't my fault. And therefore, I rely upon the hashgacha of Hashem. So Moshe Rabbeinu said that you see from here in some chalanes, you can't rely upon miracles. And even if you're Baal Bitachon, it still means you have to take a little into your own hands, his shtadlus. And that's the Makor. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu learned. Very, very interesting. So a person has to be careful. To go to somebody that is contagious. On the other hand, there are some poskim that say that maybe it's okay. I don't know. Maybe it depends on the level of the person. But everybody's worried about viruses today. So let's say a person was exposed to a virus, and now he's afraid. So he wants to take some euthanasia. He wants to take some elderberry. All these things are supposed to be very good to prevent, to bolster a person's immune system and to prevent viruses. There's all types of immune support medications. It's not medications, really herbs. Alternative medicine, not what we call allopathic medicine. So some parts can bring down that it would be okay. In such a case, where you're afraid, it's not considered to be that you're sick yet, and so considered still to be Michael Briam, and therefore you're allowed to take the medicine on Shabbos. Others say that forget about that. Even if it wasn't a Michael Briam, even if it wasn't something that normally a healthy person would take, but if it could be that you would turn into a chol sheyesh basakana, or even a chol sheyesh basakana, it could be that you would take ill, then there's no obligation to take ill. You're allowed to stave off, you're allowed to preventively, you're allowed to go ahead and prevent the illness, and therefore you're allowed to take the medicine on Shabbos. As far as creams are concerned, you have a big problem, because a cream that has to be rubbed in, there's a potential issur of memoreach, which is smoothing. You're not allowed to smooth something down on Shabbos. Rav Shlomo Zalman has a fascinating psak. Then some say the Chazon Ish held like this as well. It's very controversial what the Chazon Ish really held, and whether he was makel about this, but that the psak is that a cream that is entirely absorbed into the system was not part of the original issur of memoreach, of smoothing down. Smoothing down means that there's a cream that's going to be left, that's a topical cream, that there's a residue, or there's a remnant left on the skin, and you have to, smooth it down. You're involved in it. However, if you're relying upon it being secreted, so to speak, into the skin, and it's totally absorbed into the skin, that's not considered memoreach. And therefore, certainly for a child that is still young, a child under 9, for somebody that is a cholish, somebody that's sick, you could certainly rely upon that. The Shulchan Aruch actually is very makel. The Shulchan Aruch speaks about oil. It talks about, let's say, baby oil, moisturizing oil, that you want to put it on. You're not sick at all. You just want to do it for your pleasure. So Shulchan Aruch says, this is Beis Yosef. His psak is that you're allowed to go ahead, since you're not doing it for any health issue, you're just doing it for, people that they used to have, let's say you have, today, phototherapy and aromatherapy, and they have oil therapies, where you go ahead, but again, not even therapy. You just do it because, that it's something that's pleasurable. It's something that is considered to be salubrious without being medicinal at all. where you get joy from rubbing, some oil into your body. Shulchan Aruch says that that's nothing to do with Briam. That's nothing to do with refuah. It just has to do with, it's a leisurely thing, it's a pleasurable, recreational thing that you want to do, to enjoy. And he says, Shemen Vered, he says, rose oil may be a problem, because rose oil is expensive, and you're only going to use rose oil if you need it desperately. But the Ramah vehemently argues, I think, on the, not vehemently, but he argues pretty strongly on the Shulchan Aruch, and he says that Bisman Hazeh, people don't use oils, that the conduct, the code of behavior of people in society in his time, and I think it stands true for our time, is that people don't use oils so readily. They're only using oils when they need it, for something that's health related. And therefore, there would still be the restriction on oils. As far as taking a cream on a gauze pad and putting it on where you're not actually rubbing it in, let's say you have to bacitration, you're afraid. Again, if a person's afraid of infection, a child or even an adult gets a cut and they're afraid of infection, they're afraid of the wound festering and bacteria forming, then that could be a chayla. That, a person should not be machmir. Obviously, if there's a rav readily available, ask the rav. But knock on his door or call him, whatever it is, whatever's necessary. But you don't want chal shama cellulitis. You don't want we could develop into sepsis. Into all these very dangerous infections. Even a small wound could develop, into a very serious infection. I've seen it many times with people. So therefore, you have to be careful. So take bacitration, put it on a gauze pad on the wound, so really you're not doing anything. And certainly to ask a guy, there's no problem. Most poskim holds, machloekas achronim, but most poskim hold, I think it's based on Pri Megadim, that the Isser is on the healer and on the person being healed. However, the Pri Megadim, I think, and there are some other poskim that hold that the Isser is only on the person conducting the healing, but the person himself, who's totally passive and almost indifferent, even though he's benefiting from it, there's no Isser on him. So therefore, if you're asking a guy to go ahead and to rub it in, according to those poskim, there's no Isser. And for you to go ahead and to just put the Band-Aid or to put the gauze pad with the medicine on it, with the cream on it. So again, there's two potential issues here. There's two potential pitfalls in halacha. There's the smoothing b'mareach, and then there's the refuah. It's not doing something that's medicinal on Shabbos. So if you're not talking b'mareach, you're not doing the smoothing because you're just putting it on without rubbing it in, you don't have to rub it in necessarily. If it's on contact of the wound, then it could hopefully make an impact. So then you're not worried about merech, you're just worried about refuah. And refuah, again, if it's a case of sakana, then it's okay. Then you don't have to worry about it. Now, back to the situation of a person, let's say, who's just not feeling well. He wants to take Tylenol, he wants to take Motrin. Normal, healthy people do not take, or they shouldn't take, Tylenol or Motrin. Of course, there's a big difference between ibuprofen and simonop. There's a big difference, but it has to do with the liver, it has to do also with the stomach. A person has to know what he should take, what he shouldn't take. If somebody has blood thinner issues, then one shouldn't take one, and should take the other. But most average people are not taking on a daily basis. Some people take a baby aspirin preventively. So baby aspirin, they take it for the heart. Again, there's a lot of different medical opinions about this. It's constantly changing whether they should take it on a daily basis. If a person would take that, if daily aspirin may be a Michael Briam, that may be okay then. But otherwise, let's say taking ibuprofen or taking something like that because a person has a migraine, a person has a headache, are you allowed to take it on Shabbos? L'chara not. Pashtus not. So migraine, if a person is debilitated, a person otherwise would be in bed and can't function, then he could take it. Stomazoi, a headache, we say that a person should try to live with it. If a person has a cold, somebody asked me if he's allowed to take Alka-Seltzer. I'll never forget that question because I didn't know people take Alka-Seltzer. It's like this interesting concoction that you put, okay, but I guess it helps, must work. It's not an advertisement for Alka-Seltzer. I don't know if it works, it doesn't work. I have no idea. Say, but Sudafed, any of these things. So the guy told me, he says, listen, I'm totally, I can't function. If you can't function, you could take it. Sinuses, sometimes with sinus, if a person has a sinus infection actually could be dangerous. People don't realize. And there's some pediatricians and some physicians that don't believe in sinus infections. I think they're very wrong. It could be a real illness, and chas v'chalila, it could go to the brain. You remember, the sinus cavities are not far from, from the skull.
Aside from the refuah issue, is apples not putting a pill in water and closing the...
Yes, I say, there are poskim that are makel about it. They say that it's not considered to be noilet or anything, yeah. I mean, if it's, I don't think it's the recommended. I think it's better to go for something else. But if he says the only thing that works, listen, some people, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says that there's every person has a roife, a doctor that can only work for him. Every person has a refuah that can only work for him. Therefore, you never know, and that's why a doctor, according to halacha, technically speaking, Rabbi Yashem has a whole tshuva about it. But technically speaking, a doctor is never allowed to turn away a patient. A doctor is never allowed to go on vacation. It's a big shiloh. Is ever allowed to turn away a patient? Ever allowed, because you never know if you're going to be the shliach for that person. You know, so you never know which regiment or which treatment could help that person. As far as sometimes the doctors tell you that medicine. I had this a few weeks ago. A guy asked me. He says that he was prescribed to take antibiotic for 10 days. Now, by the way, the new medical science, which I saw around 6 months ago, because I was thinking about the shiloh very much. It comes up often. People ask me this. The new side, they used to say that if you don't take the full 10-day prescription, then it can be counterproductive, and the person can regress in their illness. Because this, first of all, there's you could develop resistance to the antibiotic. Of course, that's why some say that even if you use soap, and everybody should of course use hand soap, especially with germs proliferate. I mean, I don't know why I have to tell people to use hand soap, but I go to many shuls and many schools, and unfortunately, there's no soap, and I think it's the biggest anathema to Yiddishkeit. I mean, it's a simple elementary zach that everybody should be familiar with. It bothers me very much when I don't see that institutions don't have soap. But some say that using antibacterial soap could build resistance against antibiotics. So that's an interesting thing, but it has nothing to do with halacha. Halachically, though, talking about finishing the 10-day dosage. Now, I saw that there's a whole dispute now. They used to say that if you don't follow the medicine, even if you feel better, you have to finish the medicine. Otherwise, the illness could resurge. Now they're saying that once you finish the antibiotic, now you don't have to finish the antibiotic. Once the symptoms go away, then you can stop the antibiotic. I don't know. Halachically, I'm not sure. I don't know. You have to ask a big posek. I don't know what the halacha would be. But assuming that you have to take the full 10-day, that the medical science still says that you have to take the full day, 10-day regimen, then pashtus, you're allowed to take it on Shabbos. Also, you don't have to skip it on Shabbos. Although, if you could take the pill on Friday, Erev Shabbos, let's say it's once a day, take it once a day. There's certain like antibiotics, Omnicef is only taken once a day. I think Synthromax may be only taken once a day, maybe, I'm not sure. But certain antibiotics you can take once a day. So if that's the case, you take it once before Shabbos and once after Shabbos and shine. It's genug, it's enough, it's sufficient. If it's a 2-day antibiotic, then sometimes the doctor will tell you they could skip one dosage out of the 2 dosages a day, and you'll still be okay. So it's important to ask the doctor. If it's a doctor that is not such a friendly Jew, then you don't have to tell him why you're asking. Because if you tell him it's religious related, he'll tell you you're crazy. And what are you following? These archaic and quackery, things. So I'm saying, you don't have to tell him. You don't have to divulge the real reason what it's about. But most poskim hold. There are many poskim that hold that if it's a pill that has to be taken every day, then you're allowed to take it on Shabbos as well. You don't have to skip the Shabbos. If it doesn't have any negative consequences, then you don't have to take it on. You shouldn't take it on Shabbos. But if it will have, then you should take it on Shabbos as well. Okay. Any quick? Yeah.
Maybe it's not the right time. I'm not sure. I'm just wondering if there's a time where a person wants to take something.
Just water, please. Yeah. Just fill it up, please. Yeah, just go. Thank you.
There's a time where someone wants to take some sort of medication, but halakhically they really shouldn't on Shabbos, and there's a Jewish doctor working, and they go into a hospital to see if they can do it. I'm wondering what the doctor is supposed to do.
I'm sorry. What's
if a person wants to take something,
yeah,
but halakhically they shouldn't on Shabbos. If it's a situation like that, and they go into a hospital to have it taken care of, and it's a Jewish doctor, a religious Jewish doctor in the hospital. Maybe the guy is or isn't. Maybe the guy's not religious. The Jew who's coming into the hospital. Is the doctor supposed to refuse him, or is this doctor supposed to just do it?
Take it from the sink, maybe. Well, if a guy's in a hospital, then generally speaking, l'chara, he has some kind of,
I'm saying like a guy who he's like, I could really use a Tylenol right now. Oh, there's a hospital right there. I'll just go in and ask or something. I have free time. I know it sounds out of the box. But a lot of things that come up in Halacha could seem out of the box.
Right. I mean, it depends.
Assume that it's happening. Let's assume that it's happening.
But there's a lot of factors to that. If the guy's not religious, he's allowed to give it to him. If the guy is religious and he'll lose his job. If he doesn't give it to him, he's allowed to give it to him. There's a lot of factors to that. There's a lot of potential factors. It has to do with Lifnei Ivra, Mesayed L'Dvar Veira, and how much a person is chayiv to lose. Gracious God, thank you. But pashtus, and generally speaking, it will be okay. Okay, next shaila is nugeya to. Somebody asked me about a person that that's a pregnant woman, as far as waiting between meat and milk. She ate meat, and then she has a craving for milk. So, what's halacha? Now we know we've spoken before in past weeks. They have to wait 6 hours. That's how we hold. They have to wait 6 hours. And Aruch HaShulchan says it's very, very strict to wait the 6 hours. He says otherwise it's parit skeder, it's breaching the fence. It means that it's a big infraction, it's a big violation. What about in this case? I just want to point out, hashkafically, very, very interesting, is that why we have an isser of basar v'chalav. Now, obviously, mixing meat and milk. The reason for the isser, obviously. It's a chok, perhaps it's a statute, not something that we could necessarily decipher or understand with our mortal acumen. It's the Rebbeinu Shalom gave it to us for our benefit. We don't have to know why, but it's interesting to know. The Chazal and the Chachamim always gave reasons to make it easier for us to be able to digest.
Is that a pun?
Exactly. So Ibn Ezra says something very interesting. Ibn Ezra says that the same way you're not allowed to slaughter a parent and a child animal on the same day, because it's considered to be cruel. It's considered to be something that is just inappropriate. It's callous. It's insensitive. It's considered to be like malicious. There are those Rishonim that say that it's because basically what you're doing is you have to view every animal as the last of its species, as an endangered species, and you are causing sort of that line of the animal world, of that particular species or that particular animal, to be decimated. So Rabbi Ibn Ezra says that the same way there's Isra of Asav Espanoi, the Torah tells you that it could be that you'll end up cooking the goat in its mother's milk. And even if you have other flock or you have other cattle, other bovine, but you may end up doing that, and that's considered to be, because of that, that's considered to be very cruel and callous. And that was makor for forbidding it, and then it extended to any meat and milk at all, because that was like an offshoot that was sort of a derivative of the original Isser of being callous or cruel. That's Ibn Ezra. The Aznaim L'Torah has a fascinating aside. He says that meat, the very nature of meat, Bekoshi Hatera, that the Torah Kadosha, it only permitted meat to be eaten Bekoshi, which means that it wasn't the ipso facto, it wasn't the original design of the Rebbeinu Shalom necessarily to allow the person to have meat. The original design was that animals and humans would coexist peacefully, and that they would all follow the orders of Hashem, and therefore Adam Arishon didn't eat meat. It was only when humanity and the animal world both rebelled against Hashem, and when they perpetrated immoral deeds, then Noach took care of the animals, and Hashem said, okay, now that you took care of the animals, you saved the animals, now you have reshus to eat animals. But you see that Rabbi Shalom's original design was not to eat animals. So then he says something very interesting. He says that chalav, drinking milk, is also b'kosher hetera. That really maybe it shouldn't have been allowed, milk. Because milk is considered to be Ever Menachai, maybe. Ever Menachai means that you're eating or drinking from an animal while it's alive. You're deriving benefit from the animal while it's alive. Now, you milk a cow, the animal is still alive. The fact is that the Torah permits it. Without the Torah permitting it, we would never know that it's allowed. It would be Ever Menachai. So perhaps even before the Torah was given at Sinai, maybe they weren't allowed to drink milk because the Torah didn't permit it yet. So it says so to...
Terrible.
Imagine, no chocolate milk, all right? No milkshakes. So as a matter of fact, the Chasam Sofer held that eggs, he holds that, the Chasam Sofer, obviously we don't paskin like this, but he holds that Goyim are not allowed to eat eggs. Imagine Goyim, no bacon and eggs, no omelets, no scrambled eggs. Terrible life. Why? He says because it's Ever Menachai. It's you're eating from a live animal something. He says that God allowed the Jewish people, the Yidden, he said that he told them they're allowed to have eggs. Where does he tell Goyim they're allowed to have eggs? He never says that. So obviously we don't paskin like that. No, it's a bit interesting chiddush. So says the Zayin Torah to take meat and milk, which are both chidushim that you're allowed to have, and mix them together and to create an entity that is compounded by chedushim, he says that would not be appropriate. That's why he says, that's why he's theorizing, again, it's just a hypothesis, it's a theory why Hashem forbade basar v'chalav. Rabbeinu Bechaya, I think, is even more profound, and Rabbeinu Bechaya says the reason why you're not allowed to have meat and milk is because milk, according to the Gemara says, that how is milk formed? Milk is dam nechar v'nasa chalav. Milk is formed through the congealing of blood. That there is a enzymatic reaction which causes blood to transfer and transform into blood, into milk. He says that blood, although you ingest, whatever you ingest or digest, any type of food, it undergoes a metamorphosis in the physiology of the person. The only exception, he says, is blood. He says, because dam hu nefesh, because in the blood is the person's or the animal's nefesh. That's the primordial instinct, or what animates the animal. Call it the element of the animal's soul. So he says that the dam, eating blood, has in it the raw instinct of the animal, which is called the achzari, the cruelty or the instinctual nature of the animal. And therefore he says that when you take milk and you have it with meat, he says then there's a reversion process where it reverts back to blood, and that since it reverts back to blood, now you have the isser of blood because you're eating the milk with the meat. And that's why you're not allowed to have milk and meat together. That's Rabbi Bachia. Isn't that fascinating? Mamash, amazing. So, other Kadmonim, I think, say, and it's based on Kabbalah, that the reason why we don't have milk and meat together is because they're both derived from the animal, but one is derived from the animal while the animal is alive, the milk, and the other one is derived from the animal when the animal is dead, the meat. And therefore, you're mixing life and death together. And it could be dangerous for the system, for the person, to have a hybrid between life and death. Now, let's go back to our Shaila. Yeah.
What about eggs, for instance? We get eggs from an animal while it's alive, but we could have it, we put eggs into, let's say, a kugel that we have right next to the cholent that has meat in it. So wouldn't that be, I mean, the egg itself I don't know if you'd say the animal is dead, because I don't think it's really been developed yet, but it comes from an animal while it's still alive.
Right, but it's from a bird that didn't properly form. So it's sort of it has a connection already to a life that wasn't
So we consider the egg as its own thing as opposed to where it came from.
Right, but another reason why is that the egg, the reason why it's considered to be parv, not fleishik, is because it says that during that process it changes to afer ba'alma. It undergoes a certain type of transformation where it's considered to disintegrate and it takes on a whole new entity. Afer da'ara, that's what it says.
Now, I was going to say that true vegetarians do.
Vegans don't eat any egg.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't.
Nothing.
And like you were saying, someone once told me that if you think about it, like milk and meat, like you were saying, Rabbi, that milk comes from a live animal and meat comes from a dead animal, but milk could also represent life because it's produced for a new life.
All right, good. Okay, very good. Yeah. Well, also al pi Kabbalah, it's brought down that there's din and there's chesed, and that chalav represents the chesed and the basar represent the din, and therefore the same way that we tie our shoelaces and put on our shoes a certain way, because it's chesed and din. Therefore, also meat and milk could be mixing chesed with din, and therefore it's considered to be dangerous. That's Kabbalistic, though. Now, so back to our shaila about somebody, a pregnant woman that wants to know that she gets a craving for milk after having meat. So what's the halacha? So it's very fascinating because there's a famous meiri that cites a medrash. The medrash speaks about the malachim that they had a taina, they had an accusation against Hashem. And they said, you're giving the Torah, right? Last week's parsha, also this week's parsha, this past week's parsha, Nasiv and Ishma, you're giving the Torah to mortals, to human beings? Give it to us, give it to angels. And God, his retort is, he says, what do you mean? He says, even a child knows that they can't eat milk after meat, that they first have to wash their hands. This is what it says. And you angels, when you were by Avraham Avinu, having the meal, you ate milk right after having meat. So, obviously, the human beings are on a higher level than you. So the Meiri gleans from here, he says, what's going on with this medrash? It says that you're allowed to have milk right after washing your hands. That's not a criteria that we use. The criteria that we use is waiting, right? That the food has to be able to digest. So he says from here that maybe you see that there's a raya that a child maybe doesn't have to wait between meat and milk. Now, the Shumat Sedeshin takes it a step further. And Shumat Sedeshin says that there are instances, perhaps, it depends on the age of the child, but that a child, let's say that certainly that is not the age of chinuch, will not necessarily have to wait much at all. And he says that those that are not medaktek in it, maybe the people that are not religious, there's a big shiloh, let's say, about serving. Let's say somebody comes to your house for a Shabbos meal, and maybe they just had, this real gesunte bologna sandwich, for lunch. And now that I'm sorry, and let's say I'm not Shabbos meal. Let's say they came to you, for a meal, and you're serving them milk now. Do you have to ask them, by the way, are you within the 6 hour? And they'll look at you, what? Is this a new type of vegan? Like what kind of diet is this? They don't know it's a religious thing at all. So based on this Trumas Desha, I don't think you necessarily would have to be medaktek in it. But it's interesting because the Aruch HaShulchan paskins that somebody, he says his lashon is Adam Sheina Bari, that somebody that's not healthy necessarily, somebody that's not feeling well. So he says that 1 hour in that case, obviously a person shouldn't take advantage of this halacha, but it's really, it's talking about a person's really not feeling well and that milk could help him, then he's allowed to wait only 1 hour. So then the post can bring down that certainly for a pregnant or nursing woman that needs the extra strength and needs, the extra assistance, she would be allowed to, 1 hour would suffice, for her. So that would be the halacha. But again, everybody should ask questions and never take it for granted. Okay, so we're going to conclude over here. Shkach everybody, thank you for coming, thank you for listening. If everybody has any questions or comments, we welcome them now. But the Aruch HaShulchan said it became codified, and he says that anybody that tampers with it, he gives a curse to. So, it's, and the poskim, it's machlokes between Tosfos and the Rambam. Interesting thing is that most Ashkenazim end up passing like the Rambam, and most Sephardim end up passing like this. I mean, it's interesting how it evolved, but, it originally was,
I mean,
The Gemara never says a shiur. The Gemara does not say a precise time. The Gemara says, well, the Gemara says bein suda l'suda. So a few weeks ago we spoke about that. We said that Rav Aaron Cutler held that into the 5th hour was sufficient, and therefore if somebody's mesupik,
the German Jews wait only 3.
Yeah, well, some only wait, some wait only the Scandinavian or Norwegian, or I don't know if there were Jews there, but yeah, the
Early 19th century.
the Bavarian Jews wait 1 hour.
Oh, I don't know about Bavarian, but I know in certain parts of Lithuania, in Kurland, they had the thing, I believe, 3 hours.
Right. Yeah.
But they're very much influenced by Germany.
Germany. Yeah.
Yeah. You see? I knew I should have kept my parents.
Maybe it's related to, I was listening to a shiur where we were talking about the 2 different types of tefillin people wear, where they're the same, but the order inside might be in a different order, right? And the rabbi giving the class, it was on Torah anytime, the rabbi giving the class was saying that people who are not religious be like, oh, but how do you know? What if you're wrong? And the answer is that you're not wrong, because it's not it's a question. How do I put this? The answer is that Torah teaches us that when we have a way that everyone does it, that becomes the way by Torah law that you're supposed to do it. So maybe even though, like you were talking about, the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim might hold at different times, maybe depending on where we come from, the way everyone does it is the way really that you're supposed to do it.
I just want to point out that everybody wears Rashi. They enhance it, so to speak, with also Rabbeinu Tam.
Right, so they're not wrong.
No, I'm saying, but they all, right? You wear Rashi every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't just wear Rabbeinu Tam, right?
Well, I wear Rashi and Rabbi.
Yeah, I'm saying Rashi every time. It's not that you don't, forsake. They don't forsake the Rashi tefillin. I don't know anybody that just wears Rabbeinu Tam.
Right.
When they found tefillin in Masada, when they went digging, and they found tefillin, and guess what? It was Rashi.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a whole different discussion. I think we covered it one year, maybe like 5 years ago. Maybe we'll do it again one time.
Well, but I'm saying the point is, though, that I'm saying like someone who's not religious who questions, if they say, oh, but how do you know? What if you're wrong? And the answer is that you're not wrong, because if the whole society does it this way, then that's the way that it's supposed to be done, according to Halacha, in this shiur I was listening to. So, for instance, like with keeping 6 hours, if the whole society is keeping 6 hours, even if we don't have like an exact written down or.
But we have all the Rishonim, the Ruba Rishonim, or most of the Rishonim say it's 6 hours. That's where we get it from. Yeah. So talking about the Rishonim, it's not,
72 hours after Shabbos.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying 72 to keep Shabbos 72 hours.
So, minutes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 72 minutes.
Yeah. 72. That's Amshin over in Eretz Troll. Right? 72 hours. He holds. He keeps Shabbos a few days. Yeah.
Oh no, because I was gonna.
Oh yeah, you're like you're saying. Yeah.
It's like 15 minutes between Mincha and already Ma'ariv time. Yeah. In Israel, so Ben Hashmoshosh is very, very small.
Right.
Unlike here.
Yeah, it's different.
The further north you go, the longer the Ben Hashmoshosh.
Right. Yeah.
So Halacha putting on moisturizer on Shabbos would be okay then, according to the B'Seiser for sure, and even according to the Ramah, right?
According to Ramah, if it gets melted in, so to speak, right away.
And you're not using it for a food.
You're not using it for food. Technically speaking, it would be okay. Yeah. But if you put it on, and
You can't really do that with moisturizer. You could do that maybe with something to put on a cut.
something thin, something very thin, liquidy.
But you can't just put a moisturizer in your hand and just leave it like that. You have to rub it in.
Right. So that's more like a cream. It depends on how viscous or thick it is. If it's viscous, if it's thick, then it'll be a problem. But if it's not, then technically speaking,
The way I took what you said was, if someone has, let's say, a cut on their leg, and they want to put some kind of antibacterial, they put that on without rubbing it in and put a Band-Aid over it.
Them say they what? They put,
Concentration.
right, yeah, right,
Put that
As
straight
opposed
on
to
there, put the
like
Band-Aid
something they
on
want to rub in.
right.
But what if they want to put on moisturizer, like he's saying, and their hands are not dry, but they want to use it as a preventative from their hands getting dry?
But that's not for refuah. You know? That's okay.
I guess it depends how far a person wants to go with what they consider like needing refuah for, like having very dry hands is. Where do we draw the line of like, is it something that's only like life-threatening or just something in regards to their health in general?
No, anything that has to do with healing or health would be
So dry hands,
would be a problem. Would be a problem.
So why wouldn't that?
No, I'm saying, but if it's not like that, you know, you just want to.
In the wintertime, people's hands, they get cuts all over their knuckles
Right.
and so forth.
That's probably for healing. That would be considered to be for healing.
Right.
Then,
You don't want to have very dry skin.
yeah, yeah. But just generally, like say, chapped. You know, I don't think chapped would fall into, you know, like a. Chapped lips, I don't think is, you know, it's considered to be refuah.
So you're allowed to put chapstick, whatever it's called?
No, but that's a problem because the chapstick is you're smoothing it down, right?
What do you mean? You can't just 1, 2, and that's it? I don't know. I never use it. I don't know. Usually,
No, I'm saying, but you take it. It's in a tube, right? And it gets smaller and smaller, right?
right.
So that's considered to be like smoothing it down.
Smoothing it down on your lips?
Well, you're using it,
Too.
so you're using it.
Sometimes it's just in a jar. What if it's just in a
If
jar?
it's in a jar and you don't have to smooth it in, then it's okay.
It's complicated.
Like let's say if you dab it on, and it's not for food, just you know, then it's okay.
And would it make a difference if it's to prevent dry lips, or if you already have? Would it make a difference? Like if you're let's say your lips are perfectly fine, you just want to put on that you don't get, then it for sure should be okay, right?
L'chara would be okay, yeah. No, l'chara would be okay.
But
Yeah.
what if your lips are totally fine, but if you don't put it on, then they will, you know that they will become chapped or split or whatever. Or you can assume with the weather and so forth.
No, but now there's nothing there. There's no issue right now, so I don't think it'll be a problem. Okay. Okay, Shikar, everybody. Zay Gazon, be well.
Right.